Good morning, Garden City. I'm up here a lot. I'm Jaymi Cross, the worship pastor. First time speaker, long time singer. Um, I think I wanted to start. I wanted to start just by genuinely thanking you guys from the bottom of my heart for being courageous pursuers of His presence already. It's been a long time dream. And this is my hometown. This is where I come from. I grew up in Middlebury and Goshen. But to see a community come together to be this like hungry and leaning into the presence of God and going after and being expectant for Him to show up. It's been a wild privilege to help lead this congregation into His presence, which is what this is all about. I wanted to say I almost didn't make it this morning because at 4:45, I'm thankful that June said that she was praying for me since 3:30, and I think that if she wouldn't have been praying for me, I might have not survived this attack, because at 4:45, there was a light that fell off the back and just there was a light that fell off the back of our headboard and hit me right in the head, like at 4:45 this morning. So I woke up and it's like, good morning, Jesus. I'm here and I'm awake. Speak, Lord, for your servants listening. I didn't know if I was going to wake up in heaven or wake up in my house, but I made it, and I've had extra time to kind of mull over what I'm going to say today. So we're here. We made it. I did want to talk about why we worship, like we're kind of in this series of like why church, I was going to say too, like she said, Paige and Slavik are gone. If this goes really poorly, please come back. It'll be fine. Like I said, first time in a long time that I've been preaching. I think I'm excited to be up here, but if all goes poorly, you know what to do. But specifically, why worship in this context, in this community, with other people, with instruments? Why do we do what we do? Because there's been a lot of times when I've been in church, and I'll be in the back of the room or in the middle of the room, and all of a sudden I'm supremely aware of the fact that we've all come and gathered here, and we're all facing the same direction, and we're singing with our eyes closed, and we're lifting our hands, we're raising our hands to something that we can't see with our most of the time with our physical eyes, right? Like it's not something that we have as a part of our human experience very often, besides like concerts. And please, we have a great band, right? We have an incredible band, and we have really good music, but it can't be a concert. It has to be more than that. So as we show up, I'm really hoping that I'm not the only one that has ever had this thought, because that would be really awkward if the worship pastor got up here and be like, what are we doing? And everyone's like, we know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. I guess I'm just trying to bring attention to the fact that it's not a part of, we're obviously engaging in something that's outside of ourselves, and there's plenty of mystery to be had in the midst of it. So I kind of want to, I think my plan is to kind of walk you guys through a lot of my process, where I come from and where I've been, and some of the key markers that have shaped the way that I view and engage with worship. We came from a Mennonite community. We were singing hymns and sitting in pews. I didn't have a huge value for a worship service, or I was normally trying to blink really fast, looking at the ceiling fans and seeing if I could count all the fan blades. Did anyone else do that? I'm the only one again. Awesome. So, okay, 1, 2 people. Nice. Or watch the seconds of the clock. I didn't have a huge value for it, and I don't think that it was a problem with the hymns. I think that it was because I didn't understand what we were doing. I didn't understand why we were doing it. I didn't understand the value for it. I was checking off a box. I have deep experiences with hymns now, and I've kind of come full circle back to, I do love to get loud and crazy up here, but I love the soft, intimate moments just as much, if not more, than the big praisey moments. We'll say just as much. But I do have deep encounters. So or I didn't have a great understanding of why we were doing it as more of a routine or check the box, or a youth gathering where it was a lot more about me trying to sing loud enough so that Heidi could hear me singing and how well that I sang, and I could, like, that was mostly what I had going for me, and it turned out really well. 10 years together now, so, I think we have, thank you. It's been the honor of my life, truly. But that was basically what it is. It turned out, so boys, voice lessons. We could use more male vocalists on teams anyways. So there's that. And then fast forward to a couple years after we got married, we went to a church that started teaching us about the love of the Father and hearing God's voice and engaging with him and interacting with him and actually being vulnerable and intentional with him and listening to his voice. We would leave, so we went Sunday mornings and then there was a Wednesday night class. We would leave every single Sunday there just being absolutely mind blown. We're like, how do we not know this stuff? Like, how have we not learned that there's a God that loves us exactly the way that we are and wants nothing from us but to be in relationship with us? Absolutely blew my mind. And I showed up thirsty and hungry every single Sunday and walked away just like mind blown. And as I've figured out, like as I learned to understand who the Lord is through our community, through the preaching and the message and the teaching, I began to engage with worship on another level. I wasn't nearly as concerned about how I looked or what I was doing. But I was still working through a lot of issues. I had plenty of performance issues to take care of. I found myself a lot of the times in worship looking around the room and deciding, because we were in a wildly different context at the time. So we went from, we had sitting in pews singing hymns, all the way to drums, and we had an electric guitar. So we had a 12-year-old on drums. It was like a small 50-person church, and a 12-year-old on drums. And I was helping to lead worship because the pastor was like, figured out that I could sing and play guitar, and he's like, "We need warm bodies. Get up on the stage and play guitar." So it was a pretty wildly different context. And while I was learning to engage with the Lord, I still spent a decent amount of my time trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, how am I supposed to engage with worship? And fast forward a little bit. We're going to be jumping around my story a little bit. Fast forward again, a couple of years. This is maybe we're 24, 23, 24. We go out to Bethel School of Ministry for 3 years. And I had plenty of opportunity to decide if people were being real or fake in that environment. It was a whole nother level of expression and people that were hungry and leaning in and leaning forward into presence. I found myself caught up in quite a bit of myself in worship. And I kind of wanted to stop. And touch on this point in this looking around the room and deciding what's real and what's not. This is just me. I found myself looking around trying to emulate certain people, like watching what they do with their hands, watching when they raise their hands, when they don't. I remember this. We were in first year, and in the way that the school is set up, you have a third-year mentor who's been in the school for a couple more years. So he was my third-year mentor, and I noticed him in worship. He stood like this, like a decent amount, and he would just sit here and just like close his eyes and just sit here, or he was here, like hand on his heart. And I tried it one time, and I was like, this is really nice. Like, I feel like I'm just getting a little hug from the Lord, and I'm just chilling. And so I'm learning how to engage with worship, and I wanted to touch on the fact that like that's not an inherently a bad thing. I think that that's a big reason on why we engage with worship in community is we're learning how to engage, like we're learning from other people's experiences with the Lord, their strengths with the Lord, what they know about the Lord, and we're learning how to engage. And that the fact that we were never meant to be an island, like we weren't meant to go through this life on our own. We're all, I believe that church and worship in the context of church is like we're all coming together in strength to become something that we couldn't be outside of each other. Like we're meant to learn from each other and sharpen each other up. The comparison thing will absolutely eat you alive. Figuring out who's more spiritual or better, or putting yourself on this hierarchical scale of more passionate or more in depth will absolutely kill you. I've learned that from personal experience. But we can all grow in understanding with together. Like it's a completely valid question to ask. Like to go up to a trusted friend and be like, what in the world was going through your mind when you ran across the stage, like waving your hands and laughing your head off? Like what was that? Like what was going on? I've had these conversations with my trusted friends where I'm just like, you looked so happy and I could never do what you did. Like what was that? Like what gave you the courage or the inspiration or the willingness and the desire to look like a complete hooligan just run across the stage? I'm just curious, like help me understand, because that actually kind of looks like a lot of fun. Or on the other end is like, what were you experiencing when you were just dead quiet? Everyone else was jumping around and you were dead quiet with your head in your hands the entire worship set. Like, what was your experience with the Lord? What we're looking for is fruit. I wanted to bring up Matthew 7:15-18. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruit. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. So, let me get a drink of water. So if we can approach each other as we see good fruit in other people, in our friends, in our community, if we can approach each other and pay attention to the way that they engage with the Lord, I think that there could be practices to learn from one another. And I think that's a big part of why we do worship in community. Even on teams, Katie and Levina both lead worship differently than I do. They bring their personality underneath the umbrella of a biblical expression of worship that I'm like, it would be one of the greatest tragedies if it would be like, oh, we're gonna like emulate one certain person or one certain band or one certain we're really gonna go after, like really try and be an Upper Room or really try and be a Bethel or really try and be a Elevation. Like we're really trying to follow the Lord in our own personal space. But getting back to the story. So we're at Bethel. I'm understanding that I'm loved. I'm understanding that the Lord wants me for who I am, that he doesn't want this false front. But I'm also still trying to work out, like I also have a healthy amount of godly fear that I want to please him. And I believe that's in the room, that you guys understand that, like a healthy amount of, I want to give my best, and I want to make sure that it actually is my best, and I want to bring my full heart and my full openness. Like I just want to give my best to you, and I don't know how exactly. I'm still just like kind of wrestling with this how thing. And one day during worship, I had this moment. I prayed something in my head, like, I just want to be close to you. I want to worship you. How could I ever get enough? How could I praise you enough? And I had this, I don't know how you guys hear from the Lord. Usually for me, it's this pretty still, small voice. It's like a thought. It's like a thought that won't go away, and a thought that's like stronger than my own thoughts. Like usually it's this still, small voice. And I had this this overwhelming thought, sit down. And everyone's going nuts in the room. Like it was like a praise moment, like let everything. And I'm like, sit down during this. Okay, great. So I sit down, and the next thought, and so what I was still singing, and the next thought I had was stop singing. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I stopped singing. Remember, my original prayer was like, I want to be close to you. I want to worship you. How could I ever get enough? How could I praise you enough? And then he's like, sit down, stop singing. And so I started praying in my head and like communicating with him. And he's like, stop praying. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm asking you how I can give enough. And he's like, this gets me every time. This marked me for the rest of my life. It was like, the next thought that came into my head was like, you being with me is the greatest act of worship that you could possibly give. Like you understanding that this moment and this closeness is all that I ever wanted, and for you to actually be brave enough and courageous enough to believe me when I say that. Like to actually be courageous enough that there's nothing that I could do to make him love me more, and nothing that I could do to make him love me less. It sounds weird to say, to have the courage to believe that, but I think that's how it is. It's like that, like we want to create, like we want to build this thing or create this golden calf to offer up something that we can touch and feel and understand, and then we feel like, okay, we've given enough, or we've done enough, or like we can, okay, like yeah, we did it, we worshiped. And he just ripped that so far, like he ripped it out of me. And he's like, there's nothing you could give. There's nothing that you could give that ever would be enough. You know what I mean? It's like you can't. Like it's a false way to engage. Like it's a path that leads to nothing, because you can't give the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the Master of the universe something that he doesn't have besides you, besides your relationship. Like what you were uniquely created for is relationship with him. And that's the thing that he desires, is your heart. As simple as that sounds, it goes deeper than I think that anyone could ever imagine. I think that truth is inexplorable and inexhaustible. So that shifted a lot for me. There were plenty of times when I also had this overwhelming voice thought I never did anything crazy like run across the stage like a hooligan, but I engaged with the Lord I felt this joy well up inside of me, and everything inside, like I felt this joy well up. I'm like, I would like to go dance with those people. Like I would, because usually there was someone dancing somewhere in the room, and there usually is here too. I'd want to go dance with that person. Like someone's making a way. I feel this, like, I just want to dance before the Lord. And there's plenty of times when I had to make the decision to not care what other people thought and to engage with the Lord in that way. For me, it was specifically that holding still thing that was groundbreaking for me. Can we put up that big text slide? This is my. If I have to put what Jaymi thinks about worship, like what it is, on like a 3x5 card. The heart of worship is to host the presence of God, free from distraction, where we can come back to the simplicity of knowing God more, and through that knowing, to be transformed more into his likeness, to see his kingdom come on the earth. I think that we were born to behold the King of Kings, and we were born to know him. And worship should facilitate knowing God and being transformed more and more into his image. And then I wanted to read 2 Corinthians 3, 7 through 18. This is long, so just stick with me. Now, if the ministry that brought death, which is engraved in letters on stone, came with glory, so that the Israelites could not look steadily at the face of Moses because of its glory, transitory though it was, will not the ministry of the Spirit be even more glorious? If the ministry that brought condemnation was glorious, how much more glorious is the ministry that brings righteousness? For what was glorious has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory. And if what was transitory came with glory, how much greater is the glory of that which lasts? Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold. We are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to prevent the Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing away. But their minds were made dull, for to this day the same veil remains when the old covenant is read. It has not been removed, because only in Christ is it taken away. Even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. And I genuinely feel like I could have got up here and read that verse, and maybe we would have just went home and just think about it. This is the ministry that brought death, which is engraved in letters on stone. I believe that that's somewhat of what I was operating in for a lot of the time that I was engaging with worship. I was trying to figure out how to make it happen, how to make it work, how to engage with it. And it's this upside down, backwards kingdom that says, let go and be in right relationship with the Lord, and let worship flow from that spot. Being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory. I believe that as we become what we behold, and we become what we worship. So as we were created in Genesis 1:27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. We've been talking about Genesis a decent amount recently, which is my happy place because I love Genesis and all things about it. It's been fascinating. I did a deep dive into it I got stuck in there for a long time. This is off topic, but when I've been fascinated with the garden, maybe it's not off topic. When I've been fascinated with the Garden of Eden and the fact that we were created, when humans are created, their existence consisted of walking through the garden, chatting with the Lord, being in communication with the Lord and relationship with the Lord, and taking care of the garden, making things beautiful. And that's been our call ever since. So when Paige and Slavic said that they were going to name the organization, the church, Garden City, just immediate tears, because I'm like, this is my life. This is my life. This is my life goal. But we were created to be image bearers. And so I think that in the midst of worship, Like, I don't think that we understand the transformational power that exists in the presence of God. C.S. Lewis said, I was going to maybe put this on the screen, but if you guys can just remember it, I think it's worth remembering. C.S. Lewis, he said that, I just said it's worth remembering, now I'm forgetting it. Funny, that's very ironic. But it was something to the tune of that, that we only learn to behave ourselves in the presence of God. That might be word for word, but C.S. Lewis, we only learn to behave ourselves in the presence of God. And I think that that's exactly true. Like, we're learning how to let go of our fleshly nature and of our willingness to, our desire for things to make sense and for things to be touchable and tangible, and for us to be able to move things around and put them in their correct order so that things line up, and we miss out on the supernatural power that's available through this mysterious, most beautiful, most wonderful Father called Yahweh. But we're committed to being transformed into his likeness to bring heaven on earth. And I think that worship, prayer, all the practices, but I think that that's primarily what worship is meant to do, is to know the Father, and as we get to know him, we become more like him. Some of these it's fascinating to me that talking about the mystery of God and the depths to be explored, that I think that in just kind of going back to me figuring out, how do I worship? Because I think that there is a lot to be said about how we facilitate worship, like how we engage with worship. Like, there's the people in the crowd that would be like, we need faster songs, right? Like, we need to get up, we need to jump, like we need to go, like we have to go, like we have to, like, I don't know how you pick your set lists, but like, we need faster songs. And I'm like, yes, absolutely we do. And then we have other songs, people that are like, we need slower songs, like we need more time to contemplate, we need time to sit with the Lord, we need more space, we need more quiet. It's just so distracting with everything, as it's too loud or it's too quiet. And then we have people as like, we need more time for worship. Thank you. That's what I was waiting for. Thank you. No. I'm gonna let Paige and Slavic know when they come back. Or no, we have people that are like, we need more time for worship. Like, why are we shutting worship down? And then we have people that are like, why do we sing the exact same songs 20 times in a row? The exact same line of one song 20 times in a row. I'm bored. I get it. Like, I understand. It's like, oh man, I'm trying to think of a chorus right now. You guys know we do it all the time. We sing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and then we'll go around and do like some prophetic, spontaneous. Call it prophetic. Call it spontaneous. I would call it prophetic worship, where we're listening to the heart of God and what he's saying in this exact moment. And then we'll go back and sing the same thing 20 more times. And there's value in all of that. I think that it's a longer conversation, and I think that there's a lot of tension in all those different areas of how do we facilitate, how do we engage, how do we walk this out, like in the practical. I think that there's a lot to be said. And I'm happy that I exist, and that I'm so thankful to be a part of a community that is comfortable with wrestling with these tensions, because I think it's really healthy. Kind of back to why we do things in community. I think I can see the value in most of the points that are brought up to me and how to engage with worship. But let us never stray from what's most important. This knowing of the Father, this this deep grace that comes in the room when the people's hearts are open and leaning in and wide open to whatever he wants to do, in full surrender to seek his glory. I think that we all have this response to worship, or where it comes from, the why. I think that we all have a deep, deep desire to be known. Actually, if I could have the worship team start making their way up here. We all have a deep desire to be known. And the reality is that there's not a human on the planet that will ever fully know you. I understand that's a big statement to make, but I truly believe that there's not. Heidi knows me really well. She still makes me mad sometimes. She still, wait, I wrote offends me. That sounds better than makes me mad. But she does. We offend each other. We mess up. We say the wrong thing. You what? Likewise. Yeah, likewise, she said. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having my back there. But it's true. It's true. I love her so much, and I would do anything that I could to protect her. In my small understanding, we've all lived slightly different lives. And humans are human to human. Everything is so complex that we can choose to love each other. We're going to get it wrong. There's one person that knows you to your core. There's one person that knows you to your depths. And I could say something like, no one's ever going to know you fully. And that sounds really scary. It's not, I mean, maybe I'm alone in that, but that kind of sounds like a bummer. Like, it does sound like a bummer. Like that no human is ever going to know every little piece about you and every little thing that goes on inside you. No human will know how to care for you exactly, perfectly, 100% of the time, all the time. Sounds like a bummer. I don't think that it is. I think that it's one of the most beautiful things that we get to experience in this life, because it means that there is a spot reserved in your heart, in your soul, in your human experience. There is a spot that exists that can only be filled by the Father. There's a spot reserved for the deepest intimacy that you could ever experience. And I think that that's what worship is. I think that worship is coming close to that place that exists that no one else has access to. The how-tos are important. The practicals are really important. But I'm like, the wonder and the beauty that exists in this little bubble, in this little space, where we all collectively are meeting with Jesus, giving up our safety and social perceptions in radical obedience to his voice. All those little fears of what people think or how you may be perceived, I think they're gifts that are meant to be laid on the altar of worship. To give our best gifts and everything that we have to give, knowing where it came from in the first place. To be radically transformed into the image we were meant to be. I ended a little bit early on purpose. I wanted to give space. I wanted to give space to do that today. I wanted to give space to get outside of our comfort zones one way or another. I really want to work hard to create this invitation that has zero agenda. Maybe we just sit here and Michael plays pads the whole time. I don't know. But I want to take some time. You can stay sitting, you can stand up. But I want to take time to invite the Lord into the deepest places of our hearts and listen to what he has to say, to converse with him, to talk with him, to praise him for who he is, and to thank him. Let's worship.